Hello, everyone. My name is Mitchell Hora. I'm a farmer from Southeast Iowa, seventh generation, and I'm the founder and CEO at Continuum Ag. We have really emerged as the MMRV for carbon intensity, which is the measuring, monitoring, reporting, and verification. We're a software company. We have a software at topsoil.ag that's really built to help farmers and the biofuel industry prepare for um, decarbonization opportunities. And our number one interest has been with the 45Z credit. This emergency press conference is to talk about the recent guidance that the IRS released. I call it guidance. There's not a whole lot of guidance in it, but it's still guidance nonetheless. And they just released this yesterday at 1 o'clock Central Time, so that would have been January 10th. Of course, the Biden administration is working on getting a lot of things across the finish line before the inauguration on January 20th. So let's dig in. I don't know how long this will take, but if you have questions, please put your questions in the use the Q&A function or use the chat. I will get both of them popped up now so I see them as they come in. I've got a list of a couple things I'm going to hit on first, as far as some of my takeaways, and some of the reaction from other folks that I'm monitoring in this space, and then want to get to as many of your questions as we can. So the overall high level of this, mostly this was a nothing burger. My Corey from S&P Global, I think said it really well, where he said this wasn't just the government punting on this 45Z rule. This was pretty much they fumbled. Um, I love Monty from Iowa Renewable Fuels Association. He says today's announcement by the Treasury is a story of too little, too late. This is not a final rule. It's not a safe harbor. It's not even a proposed rule. Putting out a notice of intent 10 days before you leave office is nothing but punting the rule down the road. And that's what I'm referring to. It's not just a punt, but it was pretty much an all-out fumble. Now, there's some highlights to this, and I'm gonna get there. Oh my goodness. Mariannette, can I get you in over here? So there is some highlights here that I do think we can hit on. I do think that there's some good stuff to come. And my favorite Congresswoman, Mariannette Miller-Meeks, looks like she'll join. Congresswoman, maybe let me hit on a couple things, and would love to have you join in here too. The This initial stuff, they laid out some info, but there's a lot of work to do. So, a couple things on that. The document that they actually put out, I kind of simplify it to here's some initial stuff. We're starting a 90-day public comment period. Let us know what you think. And they laid out the ways that we can give them comment, and they obviously need a lot of it. And now Trump's team can come in and just those comments and actually make this work for farmers. I thought that the Biden folks were going to at least start something with a safe harbor, with a preliminary rule, start the concept, and they did not. However, 45Z is still in effect right now. The blender's tax credit, it is gone. There currently is 45Z, but there's still no rules, no guidance, and we really are going to need the Trump team to come in and make this a top priority, or else ag, biofuels, we're going to be in a tough spot, even tougher than we already are. So we're really going to need folks to step up and get all of us in alignment here. So we've got some time to provide the comments there. We have ways of being able to do that. Obviously, Continuum will be very public in everything that we are urging. Um, and luckily, there is some stuff coming soon that we can speak to. One of those key things that is noted in this guidance is the new GREET model. I'm going to mostly call it the 45Z GREET model, but it's technically the 45Z CF GREET model. So we've kind of known that there was probably a new GREET model coming for a while. It is developed by the Argonne National Lab, It is a GREET model. They're not forcing the CORSIA model, which is great. They give the option for SAF producers to use CORSIA. However, they are allowing us to use GREET, which is very encouraging. But multiple times in this notice yesterday, it talks about the 45Z CF GREET model. And when you click on the page and stuff, and I've continuously done it, I looked just 5 minutes ago. That 45Z GREET model does not exist today on the Department of Energy's sites. It does sound like it's coming very soon, though. We're going to be watching very closely as to what happens in this 45Z GREET model. It's supposed to be coming in the coming days, is what some of my sources are telling me that are close to this item. So anticipate that we're going to have another kind of emergency press conference, get everyone back together to talk about that. The other really important thing is that the USDA submitted their technical guidelines for climate smart agriculture crops used as biofuel feedstocks. They submitted that technical guidelines on December 6th. It's in pending review right now. And again, I had communication yesterday with sources very close to this item saying that they anticipate that guidance also being released very soon, meaning next week. So my overall take on the documents that came out yesterday, though, is they were out of order. It should have been the USDA rule go first. The USDA rule, let me read the abstract because I think it's really good. The USDA rule is that the USDA is working to establish new regulations that will set requirements for the quantification, reporting, and verification of greenhouse gas emissions associated with the production of domestic agricultural commodities used as biofuel feedstocks. The rule may create additional opportunities to incentivize biofuel feedstock crops grown with climate smart practices and may facilitate the participation of farmers in emerging environmental service markets. Translating, the USDA rule is the MRV protocols and the guidance about climate smart crops and about the feedstock MRV, which is the measuring, monitoring, reporting, verification. So really, it's those USDA rules that they've been providing a lot or they've been working on for a long time. Of course, we've provided a lot of insight. I've talked about those USDA. I've talked about the USDA rule for months and months on our webinars here. Lots of material on our YouTube page, Continuum Ag YouTube page, and the Topsoil podcast. But in those guidelines, we're expecting better definitions of the climate smart practices, better definitions of the crops used as biofuel feedstocks, definitions about are they recommending to do mass balance versus book and claim, which is very important and not mentioned in these documents at all. And I did mention the two documents that we've got here are just shy of 100 pages. A lot of stuff. But practices, crops, tracking from farm to producer, mass balance or book and claim, verification protocols and audit protocols. These documents do allude to, the IRS explicitly says that they anticipate that there will be a requirement for independent certification of the climate smart ag crops in some type of field to fuel tracking, meaning kind of what Continuum's been doing of helping farmers to document the farming practices and get your CI score or those climate smart practices verified. They did explicitly say they anticipate that there's going to have to be some type of a certification of those crops. So I think the efforts that we have been doing here to help farmers prepare, that is spot on with what the IRS is saying is coming. But we really need that USDA rule, which has the practices better defined, the MRV protocols better defined. That's what we are very much going to be looking for. And then based on the USDA technical guidelines, that will allow us to better utilize the 45Z CF GREET, the new GREET model. That the practices, then we can plug into the new GREET model. And basically in this IRS guidance, it just says calculate your CI score with the new GREET model and used everything we've done in the past. They did not change anything with prevailing wage and registered apprenticeship. They did not change anything with the financial outcomes and stuff. So it's still for ethanol, it's still 2 cents per point per gallon. For ethanol or for sustainable aviation fuel, it's a little higher. That one maxes out at $1.75. So they didn't change a whole lot of stuff. They didn't add a whole lot of additional um, specifics and guidelines. But again, we really need the USDA rule, which does have more of those specifics and guidelines in it, expecting that very soon. And then we need the 45Z GREET model. A really important thing that we're going to be monitoring is in that 45Z GREET model, there is a reference here to there being a 45Z CF GREET model user manual. And in that user manual, that's where I'm expecting there to be maybe more of a cross collaboration between the Department of Energy and their specifics in the user manual to the USDA and their technical guidelines document. So um, in these IRS rules, they say that that new GREET model is due to be out January 10th or soon thereafter. Obviously, it did not happen on January 10th, as was alluded to, but hopefully happen soon. And it should happen in conjunction with the USDA rule. And I think that's really what they messed up here and what they fumbled is we should have had the USDA rule first, which gave the definitions and gave more of the clarity and certainty here. Then we should have had the new GREET model, which says plug your data into our calculator and utilize the USDA guidance as a way to be able to do it and verify that the prices are real. And then you can quantify it here. Then we should have had the IRS rule that says use that GREET model and which points to using these technical guidance and will issue the tax credit. For some reason, they did it out of order. Doesn't make any sense to me. Um, and it doesn't very well point to the connection between these different documents. And that's really what we're going to need the Trump team to get aggressive at cleaning up. When had a conversation again with one of my folks very close to this item in DC yesterday, when I asked him about why the heck is the IRS not talking about this USDA document, he said that, well, the IRS doesn't want to reference a document that isn't published yet. And I said, well, they referenced the 45Z CF GREET model and it's not published yet. And he's like, that's a good point. And yeah, it's definitely like doesn't make any sense that they're not even following some of what they're saying, some of their own guidance that they're trying to develop rules on. So very frustrating. But uh, we're going to continue to watch very diligently to the USDA rule and to this new GREET model, and then figure out the opportunity to move forward from there. Um, some of you have seen I've been recently appointed to a USDA advisory council, so I'm hoping that I can help help to really push and share this message and the need that we need and the need for strong leadership in the upcoming USDA. I think our current USDA did a really good job. Now we'll see what's in their rule when it comes out, and I think they've done well, and I think they get it. But for some reason, the Treasury here just kind of um, really weird. They kind of jumped the gun. Was expecting it to be USDA stuff, probably like yesterday or this past week, and then uh, Department of Energy stuff soon to follow, and then at the final hour do the IRS documents. And for some reason, they did them out of order. And just doesn't make any sense when you had a whole nother week that you could have had some of these loose ends tightened up and you could have at least started the program. Instead, they've just completely punted. And seems like it's going to be, um, it seems like a major, major missed opportunity. And I think could really, really come back to bite them that they put out these documents that in my opinion, saying, and we have an intent to publish a rule. Well, that could have been said 12 months ago, and they probably could have had just about as much substance as what's in these documents. So, um, again, more to come. I think that's my main overall stuff. Another just funny thing. They ask for public comment in here and they give us a way to do it, but they note, hey, we want comment on what are new fuel production pathways that we should include in the emissions table, and what are new fuel production processes that we should include in the emissions table. Just those two things. Like it's just really weird. It's really goofy to me. Because like there's just it didn't give any other substance, didn't give any other info. But anyway, um, I think that's the main stuff. Maybe I was talking with our COO Brad here before. He and I kind of debriefing on. Of course, he read through all the guidelines. I've read through 100% of it as well, and his take is the analogy to John the Baptist saying that there is a greater one to come, and that's what we are waiting for, and hoping that there's going to be some better guidance here that we can work off of. But unfortunately, right now, this was a big nothing burger for farmers, for biofuels, and for this provision that we thought was going to be better. So let me hit a couple of these questions here real quick, and Congresswoman Miller-Meeks would love your take and stuff here too. Or maybe you want to maybe make a comment here first? Let me cue spotlight. You're so excited to have you join here today. This was totally just a I didn't talk to you before. I reached out to you yesterday, but it's like, gosh, you've done all that you really could, to help and promote this. And we're gonna need you to keep fighting for us here. And I know you are.
Well,
Uh,
you sent
uh,
the email that you were
yeah,
having, and I said, okay, why should I have doubted that you would have
yeah,
something? So,
of course.
fortunately, it worked into my schedule. I'm about to head to a Rock Island Arsenal thing, but
Awesome.
most importantly, we actually got asked by media late on Thursday for a response to the release of the rule, which didn't even get released until Friday.
Yeah,
And as you know, when they didn't release the rule during 2024, we were very much pushing Treasury and the Biden administration not to do anything because it was already too late by then.
yeah,
You're already making decisions on what you need to do, what you need to purchase, what you're going to plant, how much you're going to plant last fall. And when
mm,
they didn't have the rule out in the summertime, we said, don't put the rule out, wait, let the new administration, and then continue with the 40B, continue with the existing tax credits,
uh,
and don't put out the rule. So my response was that this was, incompetent and unconscionable, and my staff tempered it to say a day late and a dollar short. So my official media response was a day late and a dollar short.
yeah,
I think and truly it is incompetent and unconscionable to release a rule 10 days before you leave office.
yeah,
There's no, so, but I guess the good thing is the rule is so much of a nothing burger, as you said, that we'll be able to work with the Trump administration. So,
good.
you mentioned having, an advisory capacity for the USDA. I think that is great.
Mm,
Ray Gasser is applying to be the Iowa USDA rural person. I think that could be very good in this
that'd be awesome.
space. From the energy people, EPA with Lee Zeldin, he was a member of the Conservative Climate Caucus. I don't know the Department of Ag secretary nominee as much, but I think they're going to be favorable
Yeah,
to us. Energy, Doug Burgum, who's the energy czar at the White House and natural resources. So, and then Wright has made favorable comments, even though he's in oil and gas. So I think we've got the right players in place.
yeah,
To your point, it's extremely important for you all to make public comment in the public comment section.
yeah.
Put that out there, and then anything that you want us to have, send it to me. Our
Oh,
energy person left to take on a freshman office and set up the whole shop, which is, it's a position that they lust for when they're in the legislative portion of a congressional office. So send us that information so that we can also, and then you've got the entire Iowa team. I had notified people on Thursday night, Friday morning that the rule was going to be published, what was going to be in the rule. I would say, number one, at least they have the GREET model. We know that the Department of Energy had the GREET model before. Hopefully it'll be modeled so it'll be similar to what you're already used to and
yep.
what you're already implementing. And then I would say the other thing, it didn't put used cooking oil as an eligible feedstock.
Yes, thanks. I had that down and I forgot to mention that. They said, hey, foreign used cooking oil not going to be eligible, at least for now, which is
Yes.
Probably
which,
right.
and
You're right.
we had sent a lot of letters on that. So from that standpoint, I would say, if they had to publish a rule, the only good thing is that, foreign used cooking oil is not an eligible feedstock. And
Yep.
so, we don't want to be giving U.S. tax credits paid for by U.S. taxpayers to a foreign country, which
And they
we're already
said
doing
if
with
they
solar
were,
panels.
they alluded to they're already kind of working on it as well, right?
Yes,
Maybe we do need some of these foreign feedstocks because if they're gonna meet these big ambitions of producing all this stuff, we're gonna need kind of all the options on the table. But they already alluded to if we're gonna do that, we're gonna have very strict chain of custody and tracking. We're gonna
exactly.
avoid, we're gonna cut down on the fraud. So in the short term, they said cut the whole thing. You can bring it in, but you can't get any 45Z tax credit with used cooking oil. And if we're going to allow it in the future, we're going to be a lot more stringent on it. So I think that was a good move. And it shows that they're listening too, and listening to the concerns. So that was good. But
Yeah, so we had done a lot of work on that, so we're glad at least that was included and wholeheartedly agree with you. We probably are going to need all of these feedstocks, including, foreign cooking. And this is primarily, as you and your listeners know, from the Chinese
definitely.
Communist Party,
Yeah.
who has a huge infrastructure for used cooking oil that's been in place for years. But they also mix it with palm oil. So you have to track it, you have to know source, you have to verify it, which U.S. companies already do that when they're purchasing used cooking oil from other places. So with that, I don't want to say anything more. Please feel free to put in the chat line my email address. The
Sure.
official one is Miller, Miller .meeks, MEEKS at mail, not the sex, mail, mail.house.gov. Send me information, send me things. I'll get it to my, and it's all small letters. I'll send it to my chief of staff, Ken Clifford. While we're waiting, we're hiring our new energy person. So when we get that person, we'll let you know. But anything that we can include and address, and we've also sent letters for supporting Ray Gasser. So I think what we're doing, what you all, most importantly, what you all are doing, I think he's very supportive of in conservation, smart ag policies. But where the rubber is going to meet the road is what they do on these climate smart ag policies. That's going to be critically important that we help them develop these policies. And I think under the Trump administration, it's going to be favorable to the things that you're already doing. And most importantly, we want a tiered approach. And so we want to make sure that we get that in, and then that we get clarification on used cooking oil as it applies, vis-a-vis as it applies to you all. And we know that the 45Z tax credits aren't as favorable maybe as the 40B was, but we want to make it easy for you to be able to expand into this marketplace.
Yep, yep, love that. And they did allude also in some of these rules about the about adding one or more climate smart ag practices. So that was also a subtle little thing, also hinting to no bundles and the encouragement of one or more climate smart ag practices. And we've also heard similar. I've gotten similar confirmation from USDA that they are also saying that they understand that bundling and some of that is just too restrictive, and we need to allow for farmer innovation and adopt the practices that are going to be best for you and stack and add as you go. So
Yeah,
I think that's
and if
good.
you're asking me why would they release it 10 days, they may want it to, they're trying to shovel as much money out the door as possible from
Yeah.
the IRA. That's one of their signature achievements. A lot of that is going to be pulled back, especially the subsidies for electric vehicles, especially when you're making 500,000 a year. Subsidies for electric vehicle car charging stations, of which 8 have been built. So, I mean, they know that that's going to happen in our upcoming administration after President Trump is inaugurated. So they may have wanted to put out a rule to make it harder to pull stuff back.
So I was just
I
going to
don't
ask
know.
about
I don't
that.
know the logic there, but
I was just going to ask about that because yeah, they put out something, but it really didn't start anything. Like it really wasn't even. It was a forthcoming proposed rule, and this was like the
correct.
proposal of the proposal. In my take, it was they called it that. They
This
said
was the save
they
the date card.
This is that's a really good way to put it. A save the date of all right, here's kind of the draft text is what they called it. So here's the draft text. give us a little bit of feedback between now and April 10th, and then we'll be able to do it. But my concern, and there's a question in here from Schaefer, that since this isn't necessarily like starting the program and stuff, it's not really getting it going, and it technically is going right now. Like 45Z is going. It just didn't give a whole lot of additional clarity. But does like since they didn't really get more detail, does that mean that Trump's team can just say, "Nah, 45Z is just gone," or do you think
That's
like,
what we're concerned about. We've met with the leadership team. We had last Saturday, we were kept in Washington, D.C. for a retreat to go over reconciliation.
okay,
We will have one large reconciliation bill there. So, the party is looking at ways to save money and also get our energy bills across that we had done last year, our border security, and then Tax Cut and Jobs Act that that expires in 2025.
yeah,
They were thinking of doing that later in the year. A lot of us felt it needs to be done right away. One, because of the effect on people in a high inflationary environment, and that includes farmers, but also because the further down the road we go, the harder it is to do. And in reconciliation, it has to be tied to budget, has to be tied to revenue, and you don't have to have 60 votes in the Senate.
hmm,
So that package, we're going to try to get that through in April 1st. Some of that will include some spending cuts to offset what the CBO or the Congressional Budget Office is going to say will be the cost of reauthorizing the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. We're going to make the case that it's not costing anything because we're just extending the tax cuts. Unfortunately, the revenue gains after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was implemented, part of that was taken away when COVID hit. That went into effect in 2018. COVID
sure.
hit in 2020. But it's very necessary to get that through. So
A huge
people are
deal.
looking at the IRA, looking at places where there can be reasonable cuts over a 10-year budget window. I can let you know that all of the Iowa delegation, and this was mentioned by leadership when I was at a meeting on Wednesday, and that was they mentioned the Iowa delegation in the debt limit negotiations, the
Okay,
Fiscal Responsibility Act, and how we stood for these tax credits to be taken out, even though they weren't going to pass the Senate. We didn't care. We didn't want them in there.
hmm,
So we made it known that for us, that could very well be a red line. There was a little bit of a discussion, I'll say, for those who want to get rid of the renewable fuel standard. But so I think we're pushing to have those continued. We want the IRA energy tax credits to be looked at selectively. As the chair of the Conservative Climate Caucus, I have already sent to all of our caucus members, there's 70 odd of them, all of the IRA tax credits, all of them. And then we've already done which ones apply to our state in Iowa, and now we're going through and trying to find out which ones apply to every member's state. That's either on the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus or on the Conservative Climate Caucus. We want to be value added, so we
okay.
want them to know what's going on in their state. But certainly, just having all of the tax credits listed, what they do, is helpful for them. So we're going to push to keep some of these. We think it should be. I mean, there's nuclear in there. There's stuff we want. So
Yeah.
we're going to be pushing for some of that stuff.
No, I think that's great. And taking the scalpel to it versus just the chainsaw,
Throwing it out.
I think is the right thing. And yeah, I mean the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, incredibly
Wonderful.
important, but that's huge. We obviously that's got to be, and obviously we know you're fighting for that. And great to hear you fighting for 45Z too. And such an honor to have you surprise jump on here. It's always so amazing to hang out and chat with you. And yeah, good luck with your other event that you've got here today too.
Thanks. I'm going to go off video, but I'll still listen for a while and look at
Sounds awesome.
questions
Sounds
and listen
awesome.
to
All right, we'll loop
answers.
you back in if we need you.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, let's hammer through a couple of these other questions. If you got stuff again, continue to toss them in here. I'll answer as good as what I can. Was the guidance on book and trade? Oh, was there any guidance on the book and trade? Do you think that'll come through in the final ruling? So there was no mention of book and trade in the no mention of that in here. I do think that's going to be in the USDA rule. Actually, I know that they're going to be talking about that in the USDA rule. So hang close, hang tight for that. Again, we'll have to do another one of these press conferences and stuff. Matt, yeah, I'll definitely keep everyone very close on my role in the greenhouse gas committee. Pretty cool deal to be part of that, and I feel like I actually kind of know what I'm talking about here. So I'm definitely gonna be pretty aggressive at going after it, and I'll go do my best, but I'll be talking about that a lot. I literally don't know anything about the committee more than any of the rest of you. There was a press release that had my name in it, and I got an email from them like the day before saying that I've been selected. Then there was the press release. I haven't seen nothing else. I don't know when I'm going, what's going on, what we're doing for meetings. You guys know basically as much as I do, but I'll keep you posted. Bob from Nebraska, with the blender's credit gone, what are the existing soy crush plants doing going forward? Bob, I think this is something that Dad's actually sitting over here, but we were talking about it with the response in the markets here recently. We've seen without the blender's credit, which is still $1 a gallon for blenders of biodiesel, renewable diesel. There's no blender's credit for ethanol right now. That's been gone for a long time. So the blender's credit is very important on the soybean side that went away, causing a lot of uncertainty. Obviously, we've seen the soybean markets really hurting up, for months now because of some of the lack of certainty here. Then, when there was word on Thursday that the 45Z program was going to come out, obviously we saw corn and soybean markets both respond in a very positive way. We've not, and of course there was a USDA announcement yesterday that helped markets as well. But a big piece of this being this 45Z credit is incredibly important on the soybean and the corn side. Without it, they're going to be, it could be a rough go for soybeans and crush going forward. In the, let me make sure I get this right. In the emissions table that the IRS put out yesterday for biodiesel, they not only say U.S. soybean oil, but they also talk about Canadian canola and rapeseed oil. They talk about U.S. used cooking oil. They talk about tallow. They talk about distillers corn oil. They talk about Carianata oil, camelina, pennycress. So they do say and give notice here that for biodiesel eligible for 45Z, they are going to include some of these other oils as eligible feedstock. And it makes note that the calculation is in the new GREET 45Z model. So, again, I've been talking for a while that I think they're going to expand the crops in the new GREET 45Z. And that gives us a little bit of the insight. Carinata, camelina, pennycress, and Canadian canola and rape. It does not say U.S. winter canola, which is one of the things I'm surprised at. I thought that they were going to have that in there. I also do not see any mention of wheat, of U.S. wheat, and I thought that that was also going to be one that was going to make the cut, and I've not seen that. So those will be some of the things that I'll have to continue to watch. But again, that's why we need to keep fighting for having this stuff in. These policies have big impact. Nick, how does the 90-day public comment period affect the guesstimate on timeline for getting all three of these out there? The USDA rule, the 45Z model, and the IRS rule. It doesn't impact it at all. So the USDA rule and the new GREET 45Z, I was told yesterday, expect those next week and maybe even early next week. So the 90-day public comment period, that is the Department of Treasury comment period. That is separate from the new USDA technical guidelines rule and the new model. Now, even the USDA technical guidelines, I believe it also will now undergo a comment period as well. I don't know if that is required or what will happen there because this will end up being an interim final rule is I believe the correct terminology of what they are working on getting pushed through the White House right now. It'll end up being the interim final rule, but from what I heard, they're going to be seeking comment, and I'm assuming that's going to be somewhat of a living document as we keep going forward. So, the biggest thing with the 90-day thing is I was really hoping that with this 45Z info, that it was at least going to give a little bit more certainty, a little bit more opportunity to start the flow of money to start more investment in this space. And from what we've got so far, didn't do that. It gave good indication that you're going to need a lot of data. You're going to need to go through audits and verification. You're going to have to go through accredited audits as a biofuel producer. And it even gave mention of as the feedstock, and somebody that's trying to qualify as a utilizing climate smart practices. It alluded that you're going to need to do an audit, but we're going to need that USDA guidance to give us more details. Myron, do you think the idea of certificates will still be in play, or that our crops need to go to the ethanol and biodiesel? Great question, Myron. So the certificates, I think, is still in play kind of either way. And obviously that's what Continuum's been helping to develop, right? We call them CI certificates, where it's one certificate per bushel. The certificate has on it your CI score. Now we've been running the CI scores based on the current feedstock calculator, which was released about a year ago. Now we know for certain there's going to be a new feedstock calculator. So your CI score today is going to be different, but we can still issue those certificates. What Myron's getting at is, will the certificates be in play, or is it going to be the crop going to the ethanol plant or to biodiesel? That is the difference between mass balance versus book and claim or similar systems. So if it's book and claim, the certificates and the grain is decoupled, which is what we want. Helps scale things tremendously. And some of the tracking infrastructure is not necessarily there. And a lot of this grain has already been commingled into the supply chain. It's going to be hard to go back and attempt to mass balance it. But we can go and determine how many certificates were created on a field, and we can track where those certificates were sold. Not that hard to do. Make this a lot more scalable. So, hopefully it will be decoupled and the certificates will be very important. If there is mass balance, if they do want to go get that tracked, what will happen is we need to be communicating with all of you that are involved in an elevator or an ethanol plant, and we got to basically retroactively go back to your supply chain and go and get the certificates from within your supply chain and retroactively associate those certificates to the scale tickets. We have a lot of work, a lot more expensive. Therefore, I think the upside opportunity for the farmer isn't going to be as good, and we're going to lose out on a lot of opportunity there. And the longer they wait, the less and less time we got to do this, the less and less opportunity that there's going to be. But as farmers, all we can do is make sure that our data is put together, it is ready. Whether you're using a system like ours or whoever's, I don't really care, as long as you own your data, and you know what you're signing up for, and that you have control to be able to participate in this however is best for you. But so Myron, I guess long story short, still the farmer data incredibly important. You can document your practices at topsoil.ag today. We're going to have to rerun your CI score. Looks like very soon, which is fine. I've been saying that for a long time. And then how we're going to track these, that is what we're going to be looking at the USDA rule to give us some more clarity on, and hopefully they go with the book and claim. But Jackie, great to have you on. Good news with the fact that it should be unbundled. I totally agree. Any more insight on where we could see higher value for the individual practices? I don't know yet. That's going to have to be in the new GREET model. But in my conversation yesterday with my contact in DC that's very close to this, one of my contacts, he was giving me an example that, hey, not going to be bundled, but you're going to be able to stack some of the climate smart ag practices. And in the stacking of those practices, they have calculated that the financial opportunity in 45Z would be more potential to be more than $1 a bushel. Now, again, that's got to be shared. The scores and the value that we show on topsoil is the same thing that he was alluding to, the total pie. What we don't yet know is how is the pie going to be sliced up. But what was very encouraging is that they understand that the financial value is going to have to be significant enough to warrant investment. And he gave me this example yesterday, alluding to, like I said, it gave the exact words of, you stack a couple of these things and the value is going to be more than $1 a bushel. And as you split that money up, it's a big enough pie that I think can really make this work. Craig, what's this mean for 2025 sales? we have to hold tight. Unfortunately, we're starting to, with the increase in crop prices yesterday, we're like, hey, maybe we need to start moving some grain. Hopefully, this becomes a mass balance program, and then it won't necessarily matter where or when you sold the. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Dad's over here to quickly correct me. As long as it's a book and claim program, it won't necessarily matter where or when you sold the corn to. You can sell the certificates separate. That's really what we need. Again, the grain, a lot of the grain's already been sold. It's already been commingled. I mean, very costly, very time, very costly in terms of financials and time to go back and do it a different way. Um, I was hoping that there was going to be better clarity here on what to do with your crops. And there's not. Again, that's part of them completely fumbling on this. Did not give us the really detailed certainty that we need. And farmers need cash. We got to start moving this stuff. So if you do start selling grain, we've sold some of ours too. Hopefully it ends up being the book and claim, and then we're okay. If not, it's we got to kind of lay in the bed that we made there. So, Myron here, what are thoughts about the grain that needs to be moved before the official rules come out? Try to wait or moving. Just kind of was talking about there. So hopefully, got your question answered. That I mean, we can keep track of everything, keep track of all of your, keep track of all of that. And that's why I've been yelling at the elevators and the ethanol plants for a long time that you need to start communicating with your farmers and developing these systems. We have multiple pilot projects going on with the existing grain ERP systems that could be incredibly important. But again, hopefully this USDA rule gives us some guidance and be watching to hop back on another one of these press conferences for more info there. Myron, what about the foreign ethanol being ineligible since South America can choose which crop to attribute to? So this was saying that if you're bringing in foreign fuel and all you're really doing in the U.S. is making a small tweak, it's not going to qualify as production. If they're bringing in foreign fuel and converting it into a new fuel, like sustainable aviation fuel, that could count. So I do think that the way that I read it anyway, the option is still there for Brazilian sugarcane ethanol to come up for sustainable for the alcohol to jet pathway. I don't remember. Was that in the ethanol from? So the only alcohol to jet pathway in here is that it's ethanol from fermentation pathways above, which is U.S. cornstarch, U.S. corn grain, and it does mention Brazilian sugarcane for use as feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel, alcohol to jet only. So yes, that does answer the question there that Brazilian sugarcane ethanol cannot come to the U.S. and be just sold as ethanol to get 45Z, but the ethanol to jet pathway would allow for low carbon Brazilian sugarcane ethanol. Again, that's where there's the push for decarbonizing our biofuels here with climate smart practices, and that's obviously also where the carbon capture conversation comes in as well as another way to massively lower the carbon intensity of the ethanol. All right, some more here. If from David, if 45Z is in place January 1, how will 2024 grain taken into the co-op or elevator get any benefit from the carbon credit? Hopefully, I kind of mentioned some of that. That if it's the book and claim, should be good to go as long as you're not signed up for a different carbon credit program. There wasn't any necessarily mention in these rules about not being able to stack. There has been some indication though that you won't be able to do a private sector carbon credit program and participate in the carbon intensity program. Um, and uh, but if it's the book and claim, that'll be the play. Or else keep track of all your scale tickets to the elevator. Keep track of all that info. And if it does become mass balance, make sure that you've got your data organized. We're happy to help with that and be communicating with your elevator saying, hey, I need you to we gotta go make some money together here. We're gonna be eligible for this. So again, can take a lot more work, but there could be an opportunity there, even for some of the grain that was delivered in 2024. I think it was as well. So
Might depend on the
if they own the corn.
If you own it or if it's been sold.
The corn.
If you're paying storage or
Yeah. If you're paying storage, yeah. So if you have your corn that you still own and it's at an elevator and you're just paying storage, you still own that corn. And therefore you could still go and sell that low carbon corn to an ethanol plant, or be able to basically take your certificates and still go and sell them separately. It's based on who owns the corn and who owns the data. That's the determination. But again, we should know some more here soon on the USDA rule, and then we'll come back around to that. Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous saying, will there be an archive? I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to there. There's no mention of an archive or any real tracking system, again, that maybe is going to be in the USDA stuff. But they do mention a lot of stuff about registering as a biofuel producer. You got to register, go through a bunch of paperwork. As a tax credit user, you've got to have a bunch of paperwork and stuff. So maybe that's where you're getting at, that there will have to be that. There is a federal register, and you have to register to be eligible for the credit. A lot of biofuel producers have already done that. That notice came out earlier this summer. Corey, good to have you on. It was great to see you this week. Mitch, still under the assumption that other carbon credit programs are going directly to the farmer would kick eligibility out for the farmer. Yep, that's definitely still the indication, is that it's carbon intensity or a carbon credit program. Can't stack both. You can't have two different people claim the carbon. They did give a lot of clarity on two different companies claiming the 45Z credit. So in a very kind of similar manner to not being able to double count the carbon, you can't double count the 45Z benefit and stuff as well. They even gave an example. If you're a US ethanol plant and you sell your ethanol to a sustainable aviation fuel producer, that SAF producer, they would get the 45Z credit because they are producing the final transportation fuel. You are as the ethanol guy, you're producing a feedstock, not necessarily a transportation fuel. So you don't get 45Z credit and the SAF guy get 45Z credit. It's you sold the feedstock, the SAF guy gets the 45Z credit. But you're obviously going to be able to likely get a cut of that, and it's still probably worth it. The math works itself out, but you can't have both apply for 45Z. Hopefully, there'll be more again in the USDA rule. I assume they're probably going to talk about the private carbon credits versus CI, but we'll see. Anonymous. What about tax credit for carbon sequestration and use? So they also gave a lot of information in here about stacking these other tax credits. What you're referring to is 45Q. So 45Q is the tax credit for the permanent geological carbon capture, like the pipelines, right? So it very explicitly lays out, it even gives examples that you can't do the 45Q and the 45Z on the same facility. It even mentions that if the ethanol, so let's give an example, right? If the ethanol plant is getting 45Z and they say that part of their carbon intensity score includes that carbon capture system, that they are getting the credit for that carbon capture attributed to their 45Z. Whoever owns the pipeline or that equipment or whatever, they can't go get 45Q and the ethanol plant get 45Z. They're at the same system. It even said that it doesn't even matter if it's off-site or you build the CO2 compressor across the road, or it is piped a long way away and then you do something with it. If it's part of your claim for 45Z, you cannot claim a 45Q as well. They did put in actually quite a bit of information that you can't stack those two. Same as 45V, which is hydrogen, and they talk a lot about stacking the electricity stuff too, and there a lot of information in there about that, but can't stack. Any chatter about what kind of tax credit there will be for soy oil based biodiesel? Same thing. So 45Z is in there. You have to get your biodiesel carbon intensity score lower. Currently in the current GREET model for soybeans, you basically got to be doing no-till and or cover crops to reduce your CI score on soybeans. You can reduce it significantly in the current version of the GREET model. But yeah, the soy-based biodiesel is an eligible pathway here. We just need this new GREET model. The new 45Z CF GREET model will give more clarity there. The opportunity for farmers to receive any funds seems unlikely until after harvest of 2025 crop, right? No, incorrect there. So what it gave really interesting clarity on is that the credit is still for transportation biofuel produced and sold in the eligible year 2025. So it is for biofuel produced and sold starting on January 1, 2025. If you produce biofuel already this year, you weren't producing that biofuel with the 2025 crop. You're producing it with the 2024 crop. Therefore, the 2024 crop and its carbon intensity score is included in the carbon intensity calculation of the life cycle analysis of your 2025 fuel. So no, this is very much so still tied to your 2024 crop. And again, why I'm urging go to topsoil.ag and at least get your free CI score there. At least start with that for now. You plug in your data, we're going to get a new GREET model, but we will rerun it for you. Of course, it's always still totally for free. It's going to take us a little bit to plumb in that new GREET model. We don't know how extensive it's going to be, but we'll reissue an updated score, and then you can decide what the right thing is to do in terms of getting it verified or doing additional work. But you can go to Topsoil and do a basic CI score totally for free. Doesn't take that long. If you're not super tech savvy, 10, 15 minutes. But if you do it and keep it basic, you can do it in 5 minutes or so. But no, very much pertaining to the 2024 crop. What I was worried about is this definitely doesn't really allow for the investment though. So say the Trump team comes in and they're not listening to us and say they're like, nah, we got bigger fish to fry. We're not going to do 45Z. So let's just, extend the blender's credit, or let's just try to, do, print some money and do some of the additional like Trump bucks and stuff like they did last time when farmers are going through the hardships, or what uh, say they punt, well, then we could lose out on the 2024 crop if they don't get this done and adjust things. But as it is right now, this is still for 2025 fuel, therefore 2024 crop. So get your data organized and know that stay tuned for this USDA stuff. Myron, do you think 45Z will stack if I'm already participating in a federally funded climate smart program? It depends on if that climate smart program or whatever program you're in, if they are claiming a carbon outcome, a carbon credit, I don't think you're going to be able to stack. You can't double count the carbon. If you're in a cost share program getting paid for the practice, that's fine. Pay for practice, you can do that. Pay for the outcome or the carbon sequestration. Those are two different things. Those you can stack. Again, hopefully the USDA stuff gives a little bit more clarity here, but in this document, they did not give any more clarity on exactly if you can or can't stack. But besides alluding to that, if you are producing a climate smart crop, you've got to get that certified and got to have that tracking of some sort. But check in on your program and see what you're really signed up for, and see if they are taking a carbon outcome. Might be disqualified from CI, but stay tuned. Let's see what happens with this USDA rule before we get too hasty. Marley, does the new model take into consideration different kinds of manure used? Does it account for carryover to following years of nutrients? Don't know yet. Stay tuned. I don't know how aggressive they're going to get on that. But we should know in the coming days. Stay tuned for our upcoming webinars and stuff, and make sure that you note down that question, and I'll try to answer it when I get more info. Bob Miller-Meeks explanation was great. The continuing resolution on both sides. We'll negotiate and be able to make it pass. How will potential tariffs affect the negotiation? Bob, Mariannette is my local bulldog in there in DC. Your folks in Nebraska, I'm sure, are great as well, but I'm sure they'll be pushing in there to keep up on it. Um, uh, so I don't know that we probably shouldn't get into all the tariffs and all kinds of discussion here in this. Let's see what happens there, and Congresswoman Miller-Meeks maybe to provide some insight on that as those conversations get closer. But it's again, if we're gonna have tariffs and trade war stuff, farmers need 45Z, some type of these opportunities because it could be rough sledding for ag. Schaefer foreign used cooking oil not being eligible for 45Z credits is a big win for the U.S. farmer. It definitely at least cleans this up for now. It does make us um, more competitive. I think that's where there is opportunity within the soybean side to continue to keep our local soybean markets good. Definitely a good win in the short term, like I alluded to in the long term. Um, there's a lot of there's a lot of need for more and more of these fuels, and maybe in the future, if we can get things cleaned up, then we'll have uh, then maybe there's a need for collaboration with foreign feedstocks, but in the short term, yeah, definitely a good win, I think. Congresswoman saying yes, and yes, we will. We have concerns about the tariffs and stuff, so they're going to be talking about that, fighting for that. Concerns about the tariffs, but this may be done by executive order. The tariffs likely being done by executive order, but she's got to sign off. So yeah, we'll talk about that some more. But yeah, um, Trump will likely be able to do some of the tariffs with executive order. So it's going to be hard to tell how much say Congress has, but our good folks will keep fighting for us. But yeah, Congressman, great to have you on. We'll talk soon. Okay, Jackie, do you know how many facilities are registered for 45Z by the deadline? The deadline, I forget, was what, July 15th or something like that was the early deadline. Would grain cooperative have to have had registered who may be purchasing the grain or just the biofuel facility with the final processing? Okay, so I do not know exactly how many of the biofuel producers got registered. It sounded like a heck of a lot of them, and we know that a lot of them have already been getting approval. The elevator does not need to register. I've not seen any indication that it's only the producer um, who's going to be generating the 45Z credit. They are the one that has to fill out the application. It's a little confusing to me, but there was rules in there about safe harboring based on when you submit your application. The way I was reading it, I might be wrong, but the way I was reading is that if you submit to be registered as a eligible, they call it an eligible um, producer, eligible facility or something like that. If you're gonna be an eligible facility and you fill out an application, you technically may be safe harbored in based on the day that the IRS receives your application, not necessarily the day that the IRS approves your application. So that was interesting. I'm definitely not an expert there. That's we got to talk to some of our CPA friends. I'm sure Dana over at RSM will get that one figured out. But um, there was some indication in there if you can apply. It might be safe harbored in at least for that date of the application. That when the IRS approves you, you'll be able to account for any of the fuel produced from that date of application and ongoing from there. But you have to apply to be eligible. We know that for sure. Um, yeah, Lauren is being ornery about the Nothing Burger being low CI and gluten free. Uh, Regeneratively grown here, Lauren. Regeneratively grown, Nothing Burger from our friends at the IRS. But um, hopefully the double beef bacon pack burger will be coming here in the future, right? So Craig is Senator Grassley on board. He was tweeting about this yesterday. I know he's aware. I'm sure he's pushing forward. That's a I know he's at least become more educated about 45Z. I think he was kind of against it early on, kind of not so sure about it, but sounds like he's come around in a good way. And obviously we know he's going to always fight for the Iowa family farm. So um, we will see. Okay, a lot of stuff there. Great to have all the questions. Great to have Congresswoman on. I think that's all I got. So hopefully this was helpful. Appreciate all you spending the time and taking an hour with us here on your Saturday. Uh, Continue to watch. We'll let you know as soon as we know more. Hopefully it's going to be some opportunity, but as it is today, major drop, major fumble. So uncertainty, and we're gonna have to continue to hold our officials accountable that they need to follow the law, they need to get things done, and so far this has not been enough to give clarity and to get things done. So we're gonna push. More to come. Appreciate everyone spending the time here. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.